Hi, welcome to the Almost There podcast. My name's Alicia Long. I live in Toronto and I love taking in entertainment in the GTA.
My name's Dan Brennan and I'm a comedian from Hamilton and we are going to be your hosts for the Almost There podcast. Mm-hmm. I would like to apologize in advance for the audio technical difficulties. Please bear with us by the episode 3. We think we have it solved. So
we hope. We hope.
What intrigue? Hold on to find out.
This is a work in progress. We're very excited. It's a bit of a passion project. And thank you all for listening to this first episode of ours.
We hope you like it. Hi, Alicia. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How about yourself, Dan?
Well, as you can imagine, I'm really excited about all the hard work we've put in to bring this podcast to life and the people that we've been working with, buddies of yours, buddies of mine, talented people. And I'm really looking forward to bringing their stories to this podcast. And can we do a couple of shout outs to the people who helped us with the artwork and the music?
Yeah, helping us with the music, our lovely intro and all our segment pieces is a good friend of mine, Tom Bodner.
I forgot his name. That's why you had to do that.
Who hopefully we'll be hearing more from in a few weeks, I believe. And helping us with artwork is another old friend of mine, Stephen Sykes.
Nice, yeah. I really like how all of it turned out, and I'm looking forward to how this has evolved, because we can only get better, right? Like, what's your broadcasting experience?
Limited, not any podcast experience, but
right.
I did do the announcements when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Did not go well.
How can it go well?
I mean, I thought it was great, but I did not get good reviews.
Oh, no.
I think it was just that teenage boys did not want to hear me laughing. They didn't want to hear girls being joyful in the morning.
Were you being unprofessional? Is that the truth of it?
No, my friend who did it with me, she had a bit of a laugh, a very distinct laugh. So all that I would hear was that we laughed too much.
Right.
But whatever. No one was paying attention anyways. The year that I did the announcements, they decided to move the announcements from before first period to after first period because I guess so many people were late to school.
Oh, right.
Including me.
Yeah.
Like if I wouldn't have been able to do the announcements if they were meant to be before first period because I didn't show up to class a single time on time in grade 12.
Right, yes.
Then I also fell asleep in every class.
It got tougher as the years went on, didn't it?
Mm-hmm, but somehow I was student council president.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
the best we had to offer.
Oh, yeah? I didn't know about that.
No one else wanted to do it. And
that's okay. That would explain how you got the job.
No, honestly, I hadn't even been on student council before.
Right.
And everyone thought my friend should do it. And I thought she should too. So I was like, I'll do it with you. So then we did. And then I ended up doing 75% of the work.
75% of the work.
Which is fair because I was the one who suggested
Did you bring any new initiatives?
Yeah, actually, I organized a whole fashion show with with this guy who was a year older than me. He designed all the outfits.
Oh, wow.
He now works for Abercrombie & Finch.
Well, check him out.
Shout out to Ryan Jolson.
Well, we should get him on the show then.
Yeah, he was actually...
I didn't know you were the launcher of careers as well, amongst your many other talents.
Yeah, apparently so.
That's so cool. Yeah, I want to get into more of our high school days, but although they were far apart in years. Alicia, where you been?
I, for once, have been around. I went to New York recently.
Did you really?
Yeah, with my dad, 2 of my best friends, and my sister-in-law. Which is a bit of a mixed crew.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. My dad plays squash. And he and a bunch of his squash buddies decide to go in this tournament in New York City.
Right.
Normally, my dad started a bit of a tradition where he'd take me and some of my really good friends to Montreal to go to a squash tournament.
Right.
Because it was always my birthday weekend.
Yeah.
My brother got married my birthday weekend this past year. So this was kind of like, well, we couldn't go to that tournament, so let's go to the like New York one instead. Like that's what his squash pals were thinking. Mm-hmm. And so he brought us along, and it was a lot of fun. I
love New York City. Did you stay in Manhattan?
No, we were like in Midtown.
Yeah, that's in Manhattan. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well then, yes. Yeah. I guess we were.
Because there's the 5 boroughs, right, for the uninitiated. I only know that because of the Beastie Boys. So
I spent a lot of time staring at maps. Like we actually had many physical maps and circled all the places we went.
Right.
Little nerds.
Yeah. Any places of note? What was the best daytime place you went to?
We went to Chelsea Market.
Oh, very nice.
Is that what it's called? I think it was really nice. It was like had a ton of little like shops in it.
Right.
A lot of little like local vendors and stuff like that.
Right.
We just like went to like walked all to Central Park. We went to the Natural History Museum.
I remember this. You'll hear this in one of the interviews coming up. But I was part of a rollerblading gang, and I took my rollerblades to New York, and I tried to rollerblade through Central Park, and it was exhausting. I thought I had some stamina back then.
In rollerblade gangs, you're exactly what comes to mind. You really fit the profile.
Yeah, but everybody says I remind them of your dad, and you couldn't see me on a squash court either, could you?
Oh, I definitely could, because I watch my dad do it all the time. Actually, the one year we went to Montreal, we all got quite drunk and decided to put my dad in drag, kind of. So my friend did makeup on him, and he had to play in the finals the next morning, and like woke up. We went to bed at like 3. He woke up at like 6, went to play squash, and we like rolled in hungover, because we'll usually try to catch like the final game when we're there. And we're just like sitting there, and we like see him like turn around. He misses a shot, and he's like, "Shit!" And we just see like, is he still wearing the makeup? Like, and then we start like dying, and then we hear everyone else also notice. Like his friends were watching. They were like, "Something looks different about Gary." And he just slowly sweated it off.
So sorry, Gary, that we're talking about this. I have a feeling that Gary's in for heaps on this podcast.
Yeah, he actually
just based
does.
on other stories.
Yep.
What was I going to say there? I completely forgot.
Oh, one other fun thing I did in New York before we get to you. Sorry, I know you're probably eager to talk about yourself, Dan.
No, absolutely. I want to hear about New York.
But one really cool thing we did was we went to the Comedy Cellar.
Oh, wow.
And we went, and we were on standby. And like we got there early. We were in the like restaurant. The like server was really nice, and he was like, "Yeah, you just like do this." And he was like, "If you get your name on first, you'll probably be fine." And then like we go, I guess I was a bit late to like get up and go. So we got on 4th, and the guy was like, what number did you get? And we were like 4. And he was like, well, the weather's pretty bad, so maybe. And we were like, well, we're not getting in. Like that sounds like we're not going to make it. But in true basic white girl fashion, we manifested it, and we got in. We got like the last table, because there were 4 of us. And then there was like one single person that got in after us, and it was like packed. It was like the 6 or like the 7 p.m. show on the Friday.
Wow. And
it was Ryan Hamilton, Jim Norton, Rachel Feinstein, Colin Quinn, and Chris Turner. I think was all them. It was awesome.
That is really incredible.
Good. Yeah, it was awesome.
There's at least 3 names on there that I would die to see. I'd pay big money to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
seen
so
Jim
cool. Before,
which one was it again? It was
Comedy Cellar.
The Comedy Cellar. Yeah. Was it downstairs?
It was.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah.
That's handy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it hasn't relocated. I'm jealous. I'm utterly jealous. If I sound like it's not me wanting to rush and talk about myself, it's a clear bitterness.
Well, you've been doing some fun things too, right? Where have you been?
I've been to the passport office.
Thrilling.
Absolutely thrilling. So I went in there, and I had an appointment for 9. And I got in at 10 to 9. I was sat down with the guy. And for the first time in my life ever doing a mission to a government office, I arrived for the first time, handed over my paperwork. They accepted it. They charged me the money. And I went away, and now I'm awaiting my passport.
Oh my gosh,
2 summers ago,
too simple.
Yeah, but 2 summers ago when they were, there was huge lineups at the passport office. I spent 3 days outside in the hot sun in July trying to get a passport so I could go to New York. And in the end, it didn't come in time. Ooh. I missed it by like a day. And I missed my trip to New York. It was a work trip too, so my boss was really annoyed with me.
Is this passport application for New York? Are you going to make it this time?
No, I don't know. I don't have any definite plans to travel at the moment, but I have
so you're just being proactive?
I'm just, that's the other sign of maturity. Because this is the thing. I'm on an emergency passport because I didn't have they changed the Canadian citizenship cards. And I was born in Belfast, so I needed to become a Canadian a Canadian citizen. Well, I became one when I was 8. I wasn't even old enough to swear the oath, right? Mm-hmm. My dad's like, take pictures. I'm like, I don't want to take pictures. I took terrible pictures that day. The biggest day in our family's life, and I'm the one taking the pictures. 8 years old. Anyways, I didn't have my Canadian citizenship like 4 or 5 years ago when I needed a passport. So they said, well, look, if you can prove to us that you've applied for it, then, and you show them the post office receipt, tracking number, all this stuff, and they will let you go on and you can have an emergency passport. So I had an emergency passport for 2 years, and then all the chaos with the pandemic. And then by the time, that had expired, but like they sent me back the Canadian citizenship forms. They were like, this is all wrong. Like, did a monkey try and fill this out? Like, what's going on here?
We thought you were a human man.
Totally. So the next time, this time around, I had to show that I had searched, like I was applied again for my Canadian citizenship. But they were like, we're not giving you another emergency passport. You either sort this or this is it. You got 2 years. That's that.
Yeah, emergency.
So I did take it seriously this time, and I went up and I took it to my mom, and we got all the information that they needed, and she wrote it out for me in her beautiful handwriting, and we sent it off, and boom, I've got a lovely certificate from our government.
So your mom got a passport for you, basically, is what you're saying.
I don't remember her standing out in the sun for 3 days.
Sounds like she did a lot of the important part, though.
Well, this is the
mom.
point. I don't have great handwriting either.
That's
shout
good,
out to my mom. She has saved my bacon on more than one occasion, so nice. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm excited about the prospect of traveling. I would like to go places. I'd like to go back to London and do more comedy there. And because of the day job, I mentioned to you before we went on the air that I got in touch with an old colleague who has a rather good job that could spend a lot of money with my company. And he reached out today. So I'm excited because I messaged him and said, could this be the year we finally work together? And he wrote back, it could be. Let's get a meeting in the books for the next week or so. So I'm excited about that.
Is that like a corporate, love story?
That's a corporate love
story.
Sounds so
romantic.
It is.
Is that corporate flirtation?
Yes, it's called networking and being a good buddy. Nice. I usually message him. This is rather clever of me because when the World Cup's coming up, or of soccer or the Euros of soccer, they will announce the team. Right, like there's a big announcement. It's on the TV. They read them all out. People debate the team for days and days until the tournament's over. Right, and so I always message him. I will always email him when I know he is sat at the desk listening or watching the team be unveiled on his computer. Yeah, because they call it being on the plane. Like you're on the plane to the next tournament. Like he's not on the plane. He's on the plane. So let's always put it in the subject line too. I'm like, is this your year? Are you on the plane? So he knows exactly why I'm calling. But yeah, that was enough of the day job. I'll probably get that all edited out. For I'm a stand-up comedian who does stand-up comedy things.
We're not here to talk about business.
No, we're not here to talk about business, other than the business of podcasting and all the good things that we have coming up for our audience. So yeah, I'm excited to have my passport for 10 years. I don't have to worry about this problem for another 11 years. You know what I mean? When I realize that it's expired and away you go.
How much do you think you're going to change physically in 10 years? I feel like that's a lot can happen in 10 years. Like, not just you, anyone. Most
you saw right away that I took that super personally.
No, I think that about myself all the time, too.
I think you're right. I'll be like on the verge of 60 then. I'm sure I'll look completely different. It really depends when you catch someone, too. Like, 20 to 30, you're probably still all right. But like 35 to 45 might be very different. Well, to be honest with you, I looked at the picture from the last emergency passport and it was very different too. I didn't have a beard. I don't think people know me without a beard these days. So yeah.
Same.
Yeah, but I'll have to get back to New York and London. And one of the segments we're going to have on our podcast is called Dan and Alicia Go Forth. So maybe you'll just have to come with me.
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. We'll
I'm
take our
down.
podcast on the road.
Write it off as a tax expense?
So, completely.
All
Completely.
right.
I think maybe, a
Hold
real,
on, now I'm starting to
a real
see some
tax shelter.
benefits to this podcast.
A complete and utter tax shelter.
Ooh, all right.
A pit of taxes. So is it just going to be this podcast? Is it just going to be you and me talking, Alicia?
No, that's a bit boring. We're pretty cool, but
yeah, but we're best in small doses.
yeah.
We have a policy of interviewing our funny friends. That's really what we wanted to do with this podcast. I wanted to have a digital outlet to show the world how funny I am, to try and build an audience for my stand-up comedy. And I believe your vision is slightly different in that you're actually being more altruistic than I am.
I just think there's lots of really cool shit going on in Canada specifically and in our local neighborhoods, and that we should be showcasing some cool Canadian creative people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And be letting people know where they can find these people and where they can go out and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So our first clever person, our talented friend that we spoke to. I'm actually really honored to call this guy a friend. I don't know. I should have cleared that with him, actually. Because there's been nobody who's been a legend of Canadian comedy or been in Canadian comedy longer in my little group of friends, like the people that I know, my colleagues, if you will, than Scott Faulconbridge. And there's certainly no bigger legend that is more active in the Hamilton scene, as you will hear from all the things he's up to that are deeply tied to our little comedy scene in Hamilton. And I thought we had a really fun chat. He was nice enough to open up his home to us, which was interesting because we did some filming there in the summer. I didn't get to talk about this on the podcast. He's probably forgotten about it. But okay, we were filming in the pool in September and it was really cold, and that's another story for another day. But I was getting out of the pool, right? I'm in the shallow end, and to the right is this beautiful new, it looks like a huge clamshell, 4 steps, big circular thing with a sturdy handle. Looks like it was put in so that someone's grandfather could get in and out of the pool, right? And to the left,
my grandparents had a pool
and
like
to
that.
the left, which was further away from the house, there was this rickety old ladder. You know the pool ladders, right? With the white,
oh yeah,
whatever those stripes are called. And I go and I put my foot on that, and I put all my weight on it to try and lift myself up, and I crash through. The plastic gives way. I smash my knee off the bottom rung, and I have ruined this man's step. So I'm kind of now that I've relived it, I am glad we didn't mention that before.
This was in the pool. This was
Yeah.
You told me this before. I did not realize that. I grew up with the pool. You would have been banned from if you had
Nobody
done that to
fucks
my
up the
father's
pool.
pool.
I know,
Everything was
I know.
about the lining.
Well,
And also, like, my dogs, who are also actually with us at the moment, they can climb out of those ladders. Like, they can figure out those pool ladders without harming themselves.
It wasn't an issue of not understanding how the ladder worked. The concern was my rather big belly and the age of the steps in question, I think.
I see. It wasn't a slip situation.
No, and I certainly, when I approached the steps, I certainly knew what to do. It wasn't like,
you never know.
how do I negotiate
you just
this?
told me about how you couldn't get a passport without your mother. So.
Oh my God, that's true. That's true.
Lest we forget.
I got nothing to stand on.
10 minutes ago.
I got nothing to stand on. Anyways, here's our conversation with Scott Faulconbridge. We hope you like it.
Yeah, enjoy.
Sometimes you got to test to get perfection. Scotty, you going to give that one mic a go?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I like the technical proficiency that you brought to the project. Just the terminology. Are you just going to crank that up?
Yeah.
Crank that up, see what that sounds like.
The problem is, of course, that there was a 12-minute tutorial on how to use the board. I didn't get through the first 2 minutes. Yeah.
Right.
But we could just start. Here we go. All technical difficulties aside. Alicia, real treat for you. We're coming from an undisclosed location in your hometown of Burlington, Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And our very special guest today is Canadian legend, veteran comedian, Scott Faulconbridge. Scott, thanks for having us over.
Thank you for coming to my house.
We'll keep it undisclosed.
Yes, at an undisclosed location.
I believe that was your wife's only request. Don't give out the location.
Yeah, she says that really throughout my entire career. Don't tell them where we are.
I don't mind you having friends.
That's right. Just don't bring them to the house.
Right. Well, we could get into the show that you've done and how that rule was broken when it came to keeping people away from the house. But Scott, do you remember when you and I first met?
So I don't.
Gotta say,
Don't you just slowly emerged into my subconscious,
right?
Until you were
right. Probably didn't even know who I was until you heard me get a laugh. And who was that? But we first met at the Black Bull in Burlington when it was in its old location.
Right.
Big, beautiful old pub with like 3 different rooms, loads of things going on. And Glenn Foster was running a pro-am there on Friday nights. And I arrived probably less than a year in comedy. And I'm sat there with you and Kenny Robinson and Glenn, and I'm going to forget his name, Lawrence Morgenstern, rest in peace.
Yes.
And you guys are telling old war stories, and I'm just sitting there and drinking it all in. And I'm like, I could do this every Friday. I could do this Thursday, Friday, Saturday. This was heaven. Yeah. So you don't remember that, eh?
I remember everything except you. I remember doing the gig. I remember Glenn calling me up and telling me, "Oh, I'll pay you this time." And I remember showing up. I remember Kenny being there. I remember that it was all over the place, the venue.
Yeah.
And I do remember you.
Oh, bless.
I do remember
you. You can tell I was stewing in that. I'm like, no, I wouldn't have expected you to remember me. But you've been very kind. I guess we've formed some sort of a friendship because you got me involved in your very early sketches that you were doing at Levity.
Well, first of all, let's talk about what the show is.
Oh.
Faulconbridge is Falling Down.
Yes.
On Bell 5 TV.
Yes.
Thank
you for slowing me down there, Alicia.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Not everyone knows what you know, Dan.
This is true. That I'll take as a compliment.
And I'd like to add to that in addition to being on Bell 5 TV, we release a sketch every week on YouTube.
Yeah.
Just so people who don't necessarily have cable subscription can eventually get access to the whole show.
Right. So anyone under the age of, say, 35.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
That's our 35.
Who cut the cord on cable a while ago.
Right.
Thank you for the YouTube releases.
Yeah. For most people, I think today, it was kind of necessary for people to see the show.
Right.
Yeah.
That they get to see the show. It's a crazy concept, but
yeah. You've created something and you'd like eyeballs on it. That's interesting.
That's why people watching. Just watch me. Just watch me.
Look at me. Look at me.
Yeah.
No. So yes, I got to be part of this show. But Scott Faulconbridge put together a sketch show with some fantastic friends and comedians of ours from the local Hamilton, Burlington area.
Mm-hmm.
It's showing on Bell 5. I was in a couple of the sketches. I was very happy about that. But you were kind enough to put me in some of your earlier sketches that we did at Levity, where it was a comedy class instructor.
A frustrated comedy class instructor talking to the dumbest people in the world.
Correct.
And all inspired by real life scenarios. I had been teaching a class for, and what I did was some people say take the best of life.
Yeah.
I say take the worst of life.
Right.
And put it out there. It was just like scenarios you run into when you're teaching comedy, where it's just like, really, I have to say this?
Yeah.
And we put it in sketch form.
Yeah, it was good.
Was that the first one you did at a Levity, or that you've done like in Hamilton recently?
So those were the first sketches I did to tape for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't have a history in sketch, do you? Did you do sketch along the years, or?
So I was in an improv group for 20 years called
okay.
On the Spot Improv.
Fire our researchers.
Yeah, you really need to work on this. You know,
Off the cuff.
we were
Yeah.
nominated for Canadian Comedy Awards a couple of years. So I did improv for 20 years. I founded that troupe. I was in McGill Improv before that.
Right.
And I got hired for the sketch shows in Montreal that never made it beyond Montreal, I guess. But
Yeah.
so I did some sketch. I have a sense of character and beats and what makes people giggle.
Right.
But I was an improviser before I was doing stand up.
Right. Okay. I didn't
How
know that.
long before you made the switch from improv to stand up?
I did improv for about, say, a year at McGill,
Mhm.
and that was fun. And then that core group went on to do improv in a bar at a place called the Comedy Works in Montreal.
Right.
And I guess I was there about 45 seconds watching the stand up. I went, oh, you could do it all by yourself. Yeah.
Somebody handing you $20 at the time saying, this is your cut.
It was something like that. I think the first time we performed as a group, I think we made $19, and I think it was enough for like 3 pitchers of beer.
Nice.
And then I was like, within a few weeks, I had started to notice that the stand-ups were, getting, I don't know, $25, $50
Right.
on their own, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm funny by myself.
Yeah.
And I was also trying to date a girl. That's a polite way to say it.
Yeah.
And she was trying to get rid of me
Right.
at the same time.
They hadn't invented the term stalking yet.
Yeah. And she was like, one night she was like, you know what? You should sign up for open mic. And she was like, she went with me. She was, and I think that was her way of like, put your energy on that.
Yeah.
And I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that is really interesting.
And it's worked out so far.
It's
It
worked.
has.
30
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're here in Burlington.
Yeah.
But Scott, so when we were doing the sketches, the comedy workshop sketches, did you already have it in mind that you wanted to do a show? Did you already have a relationship? Were you talking to Belle, or was it more like, I'm really enjoying doing these sketches. We're working with some good people here. Let's see if we can turn it into a complete show.
I definitely always wanted to do a complete show.
Right.
I don't think you start putting stuff on tape unless you have bigger ambitions.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Generally speaking. And I was trying to there's a comedian in Hamilton who's super talented, kind of a partner of mine, Patrick Coppolino,
Yeah.
runs Levity.
Yeah.
Great guy. It's just hard to get him to do things. So I just like wrote it and said, we're doing it. Do you want to join us?
Yeah.
Because it's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's and once he's into something, he's like,
Absolutely.
totally
Yeah.
into it.
But he's a
And-
very
and
busy guy.
busy guy.
We actually spoke about this morning because Alicia lives in Toronto, goes and sees comedy all the time. And anytime she's talking to a comedian and the relationship to Hamilton or Levity comes up, that's the first answer. Tell him to answer my emails.
Pat, tell me it's my emails. What's the answer?
Yeah.
Everybody says that.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And it's a joke that's almost become stale. Yeah.
But he has everybody from people who have a genuine relationship, would be it business or personal, trying to get a hold of him every day. And then he has every open micer, people who've never touched a microphone, trying to get a hold of him every day. So I don't know how he manages it. And I hope he's listening when he heard me say that. I have nothing but sympathy.
By the way, I have a message from Pat.
Yeah.
You're no longer booked.
Darn it all.
Yeah.
Darn it all. So you put the show together with some wonderful sketches, and then it comes to the filming of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And where did that take place? The majority of that.
Yeah. So when we're doing the show,
Yeah.
yeah. So we had to like really think about locations because we had something called no money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, most of the money went to just giving it to people to do things.
Right.
Like I would say 90 whatever percent.
Mm.
And so the locations we could find that were, didn't cost us anything was Pat's Club,
Yeah.
where we shot for a couple days. And we spent about 3 days here. Just, not in my office only. That would have been tough.
In the pool in September.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But that is so funny what you said about budget, because I remember from my communications class in high school, like the first lesson they taught us is your ideas have to match your budget. If you have no budget, don't be planning a crane shot or someone falling out of a helicopter.
Right.
And I always find that really funny because we tried to start a Levity content creators group.
Yeah.
So there was about 10 people around the table. Pat was leading it, but everybody from like an open micer to serious professional comedians. And I made this little speech at the beginning is your ideas should match the budget. Remember, we've got this location and we don't have anything else. So try and match that. And then Pat goes, so does anybody have any ideas? And some guy goes, we should do a musical.
Right.
We just fund a musical out of nothing, right?
Right. Which is, by the way, the one thing we did not do, although I have 3 sketches for that.
Oh.
So we ignored that rule. And we knew we were ignoring the rule. We were just like, we're going to do something that is bigger than what we are. And we're going to just see what happens. Because people don't give you, like, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was some money.
Yeah.
And people don't do that very often.
Right.
So we just decided we're going to make something out of it. And it almost, honestly, it almost like killed us in ways you cannot. It was very stressful.
Really?
On so many levels, not just for myself, for my co-producer, Ash.
Yeah. Ashley Sloggett.
Ashley Sloggett. And for Pat as well. We drove Pat to his limit. For sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes he had to disappear, which is understandable. Sometimes I had to disappear. I probably wrote twice as much than we actually used.
Oh, right. Okay.
There's a lot of stuff sitting in a vault. I'm not saying it's funny, but it's in a vault.
It's there.
And we pushed ourselves to exhaustion.
Yeah.
Without giving out the numbers, there are comparable shows that had 10 times the budget.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah.
How long was the process from like conception to like when you had everything done and were ready to release?
About a year.
Nice.
Roughly.
And how much of that was filming?
7 days.
7 days. Yeah.
That's wild to like
tough.
compare all that amount of time to just kind of squeeze it all into 7 days. That's impressive.
Right. Well, part of the strategy was, and this was on Ashley's part, is she was trying to get really good crew at, very less than what they normally charge.
Right.
And luckily we got people who were really into the scripts, told us so. I mean, anywhere from half their price to a third their price. And we're talking really good professional cameraman. We had, I mentioned this when we did the preview at the theater.
Westdale Cinema. And we glad rags, red carpet, the whole bit. It was great.
Right. And I mentioned a guy named Paul Maxwell.
Yeah.
Who was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat was great, but he was learning stuff from Paul.
Right. Yeah. Well, I worked with Paul on a short skit that he did called The Genie. It was basically Pat and I sitting in a bar, and one of us, Pat had given a granted wishes by a genie. But the great thing about Paul, the reason I interrupted you, is that if you want to get an education in film, just walk around a set and set up a shot, because he talks the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He talks about what he's doing, and like, you could just stand there listening to him for a day and learn a ton, right? He does all the stuff for the local band, Walk Off the Earth. And,
yes, he does.
Yeah, and he's a Burlington boy. We should have him on. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Here. Well, I do think I'm funnier. So,
well, you've got that. I think he probably plays the drums better, though. He's in a band called Voltang.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know him from the Voltang days.
Yeah, he probably plays the drums faster at the very least. No, that's great. That's great. And the other thing, I got to be involved in it, which I was very, very happy about. And when we did the sketches, the comedy workshop sketches, we could play a little bit with the script, You could change things, a word here, a word there wasn't going to matter. You could make it your own. But one of the skits we did was around the bar where there was one camera on the four of us. And everything had to be like, it was all timing and getting your lines right. And we rehearsed that for like 3 hours beforehand. And it was phenomenal how quickly it came together and how well it went. And we shot it like 4 times. And then Paul's like, okay, we can move on. I'm like, I want to do that again. It was,
Right.
What do you mean we got to put that behind us?
Yeah.
But
No,
I thought that one turned out, not just because I'm in it, but I just loved the writing of it and the timing of it and the fact that we did have to be so precise,
So we, as you know, we worked it before for probably for 90 minutes, just over and over again. And I wanted to make sure it was in everybody's bones. It was that kind of sketch. It was a really dialogue-based sketch. And it's funny because I just showed it to a producer and he liked a lot of the sketches.
Yeah.
He got back to me on the bar sketch.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's definitely a fun, fast-paced sketch.
Yeah.
We did that like a play almost, I think.
Yeah. It was great. And like, we'd be in one room, you'd be running from sketch to sketch, helping with whatever. And Scott would just come in and like yell out a line maybe halfway or 2/3 of the way through the sketch, right? And away you go. And even though I had like such a limited part on it, I have such more respect for actors because, acting, I think it's easy, but being on a set is hard. Being on a set is like, you've always got to be on and you can sit there for 2 hours doing nothing. Right. And I remember when we were doing some of the comedy club sketch, I had no lines for 2 pages. And I'd even forget I was in the bloody sketch. So many times people are like, Dan, it's your line. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I was here.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's another world. Right? Yeah. I think the thing is when you're on a film set, like acting is really important. But it's just a cog in the wheel. Yeah. Like there's so much going on, right?
Absolutely.
So many creative people making that happen. And you really become aware of that when you're producing the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember David Lynch talking about, he's like, when you're a director, you have to make, 30 decisions in 30 minutes. Yeah. You're just constantly making decisions and you have to keep that bigger vision ahead. I think like decision fatigue would set in and you're like, do whatever you want,
Organized chaos for sure. Like people who do both at the same time. Like I really focused on just me trying to do my acting job when I was on the set.
Right.
And that, like, we learned lessons along the way. Like the days where I want to direct, I'd probably just direct. Like from now on, like it's really hard to do both at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that something you would ever want to do? Direct other people in like another project, or would it always kind of be your own sketches that you'd want?
I think that's a part of what I want to do for sure. I mean, I love performing, so I wouldn't stop doing that. But there are definitely things. In fact, I'm doing things right now. I'm developing projects right now where I don't think I'll be in it. Right?
Yeah, interesting.
I have a big vision. I'm kind of like into everything. And sometimes it feels right to do this, and sometimes it feels right to do this. And, I find that is what makes me the happiest, and I'm not doing this for any other reason.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great position to be in when you don't have to make decisions out of desperation or financial reasons. You just do it because it's what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
You've earned that, Scott, I think. You've earned that. Now, while all this was going on...
30 years.
Yeah, going to 30.
Put in some blood, sweat, and tears to get there.
Yes.
But while the show was going on, of course, you were prepping and released an album last year, too.
Yeah.
Above an Abandoned Building, I believe it was called.
It was called Above an Abandoned Building because it was basically done when businesses weren't back up.
Yeah.
And so, I had some fun with that.
Was it recorded in Hamilton?
It was recorded at the Burlington Yucks. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but...
Of course you are. That cough was related to it.
Right. All of a sudden the lights go out.
Yes.
But basically they weren't up and running yet. And when we did the first night recording, there was a huge snowstorm.
Right.
And we thought we weren't going to do anything. And then 70 people showed up.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh my, and we don't know how they made it into the building
Right.
because the MC couldn't find his way in the building because it wasn't properly lit or shoveled.
Sure. Yeah.
It was just a weird night. Like 70 freaks showed up. The MC ended up doing a set as a middle because he couldn't get in the building. He spent 15 minutes walking around the edge of the building. You know, it was just mayhem.
Yeah.
And I learned that like when you have a storm, like people will show up, but not very nice people.
Yeah.
The people who will drive through a storm
Right.
are insane.
Yeah.
And I had about 70 minutes of completely unusable material. Like
Didn't you have a woman try and talking to you the whole night?
the whole night.
The whole night.
Yeah. And you know, and she worked there. Partially true.
Partially true. She wasn't working at the time.
No, she was working at the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, when I say it was insane, it was insane. I had someone show up from high school, then resume his high school bully status.
Oh, no.
I had, it was, and I was like, when it was done, I was just like, well, one more night. And Justin Shaw was opening.
Lovely boy. Yeah, great comedian.
But you know, great guy, great comedian, learning, right? So he says to me, he goes, why did you choose this room? Like this, like, and which, if you'd only been there that night, was a perfectly reasonable position to take.
Yeah.
And then the next night happened, and it was perfect from head to toe. That room is a great room.
Yeah. I love the Burlington Yucks. It's got everything a club needs. Low ceilings. The crowd is 2 feet away from the stage. Everything's there and conducive to a great show.
Yeah. And that night was like the way most nights are. And I think the tape he got out of that night is like propelled him to working a lot.
Dave Smith Hayes. Is that who did it?
Did the tape?
Yeah.
No, Tyler Shasma.
Oh, Tyler Shasma. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But I mean, the videotape that Justin did was like so usable.
Nice.
And then he walked off and he went, oh, like suddenly he got it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. It was just the Friday night. So it was Justin that was walking around for 15 minutes, couldn't get it.
No, so he was the scheduled middle.
Right. Okay.
And he was the one who had to MC the first night.
Okay.
Because Ryan Dillon couldn't get it.
Right. Okay. I don't know Ryan well enough to bust his balls about that, but Justin, I could have had him the next time I saw him. Right. That's good to know. And of course, there is a restaurant in there now. It used to be a Wendell Clark's. Now under the Yuck Yucks, it's called the Black Swan.
Yeah,
but it's spelled BLK. So every time I go by, I'm like, Bleed Swan.
Are they missing the A? Is that it?
I don't know what the idea is behind that.
Right.
The kids like to do this. I'm doing a show tonight for a group called Different Nights, but it's DFRNT. Like, we don't have time for vowels.
Yeah. What's wrong with people?
I don't know. Maybe it's the Ukrainian influence on us. I don't know. The lack of vowels. That's more the Czech Republic. Anyways, let's not get into that.
Black Swan, though, the first time I went there, my dad shit his pants.
True story.
Right. Well, I guess he shit his pants earlier than had to throw out his shitty underwear in the washrooms.
Why? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so why did he shit his pants?
Oh, it's a long story. This is actually Father's Day as well.
Well, you can't just drop that and run away.
Actually, so it was Father's Day, and I was out with one of my brothers, his fiance at the time, and my dad. We went on a little pub crawl, and we ended up like wingmanning him and like picking up a lady for him.
Okay.
And she was like, "Oh, I'll walk you to your car." So we're like, "Go walk her to her car and meet us at the Black Swan." And then we don't hear from him for so long. We're like, did Gary get lost? Like, what happened? And then like right as we're like getting concerned, he like walks past. He's like, I got a story to tell you. And like powers on the bathroom.
Right.
And then he comes back and he's like, I shit my pants again because it's happened before. And I guess so he walked this lady to her car, had to he went to go pee and then
Oh,
had a fart that
a shark.
he couldn't hold in, and it turned into a whole ordeal. And then he had to walk like
How old
15
is your
minutes.
dad?
66.
Wow.
Wow. Something to
Yeah.
look forward to.
Yeah, I guess so. That lack of control.
I think I have better rectal integrity than him. That's
Right.
what we'll hope.
Wow. You should never date after 60 if you don't have rectal integrity.
I think so. I
There's
think that's a
nothing to
good
learn
rule.
from that.
If you wouldn't have been 66 at that, like how old would you have been at the time?
This just happened last summer.
Oh, really? Oh, sorry, I missed that. So was the woman like she was a romantic interest? He's like, well, I'll walk you to the car, hold the door for you. And
Yeah, like they just met. Like
Oh,
we like introduced them. They bonded over a Mr. Big chocolate bar that we bought my dad for Father's Day.
Right.
Yeah, she was actually. This relationship did not last long for my dad.
Yeah.
She was actually there with another man.
Yeah.
He got overexcited.
Yeah. By the way, I caught on to that with
Yeah.
he shit his pants.
Yeah. Should have been a sign. Some foreshadowing.
Right.
Right. That is great. That's the first time you've really jumped in, Alicia, and I'm glad you did.
Yes.
You should
Yeah.
do more of that. That's fantastic.
This portion of the podcast is brought to you by Depend.
Yeah.
I can't help myself when it comes to shitting pants. I have a lot of stories, I guess.
I feel
But I'm
like,
eager to
yeah,
tell.
I feel that could be a good sponsor for us. Depends. Yeah.
Oh,
Slim Fit depends. Scott, on top of all these wonderful things that you do, and you alluded to this earlier, maybe this is where the idea of the comedy sketches we used to do about the comedy workshop, you run the comedy workshop at
Mhm.
Liberty and have done for years now.
Couple of years, yeah.
Couple years, and it's really well attended. Like most of them are sellouts, right?
Yeah, we always have at least 15 people in a
Right.
class. And basically, I think we've gone through 200 students.
oh wow.
That's
overall.
incredible. Yeah.
It's very difficult for me to go to an open mic in the Hamilton area now because sometimes like 90% of the people in the room
Yeah.
went through my class.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. There was that time you showed up at the judge and you were prepping for your albums, I remember. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to learn anything doing jokes to a room full of my students.
Yeah.
They all brought you an apple. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's interesting because it's been a good source of new people coming into the Hamilton comedy
Yeah.
scene. And in terms of new entrants and how robust the scene is in terms of numbers of people actually out doing comedy in Hamilton, it's never been stronger. But I wouldn't say that everybody who comes to the course comes with the idea of, I want to be a comedian. It's like people come for many different reasons and
Yeah.
get different things out of it, right?
Yeah, we get a lot of people that have a background in public speaking and just want to like spice it up. Some people just like, I just want to do this once. I just want to do this once.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something, like no disrespect to any student. I can't tell what people are going to do with the course,
Yeah.
but some of the people that have performed, I'd say like you look at them and you go, oh my God, they have real potential. Never go back again.
I know.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's people who want it
Yeah.
more than people who have like easy affinity for it.
Right. Right.
And that's been one of my like interesting things I've learned. Also, like my favorite demographic of people that take the class, you get types.
Mhm.
There's always archetypes.
Mhm.
Is professional women 30 to 40.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, they have POV strong.
Right.
They've probably had to fight for whatever they have.
Interesting.
They tend to be intelligent,
Mhm.
and they're ready to talk. Like
They've got things to say.
they got things to say. Maybe they were like more timid when they were 18 or 19, but for them, like they're like now they're more mature.
Mhm.
They're ready to go. And people that come to the class thinking they're the funniest sometimes don't make it to the grad show at the end of the 6 weeks.
Interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, there's a lot
I
of
see that happening for sure.
guys.
Mhm.
I'm funny. You go,
Right.
wait a minute, this isn't working.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
That you try.
why aren't my frat fart jokes working?
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I remember the one guy, James Butler, told us this story. He's like, wait till you see this guy, James Butler, who's your assistant on the course. I don't know his official job title. I'm assuming it's assistant.
Assistant.
Thank you for confirming.
Junior assistant.
Remember to fire that researcher. Anyways, he said, wait till you see this guy. Wait till you see this guy. He only took the course because his mom would never let him do stand-up.
I know what he's talking about.
And I think the mother was then deceased. And I only saw him once. He came out to Emerson, and I've probably been doing comedy for 3 years. I was jealous. I was completely jealous of the guy. Do you know what I mean? He got a great reaction, had great timing, had great jokes. And then we never saw him again.
Right. So he did do extremely well on the original grad show. He did a couple things that were encouraging. And then I said, well, why don't you come down to Toronto? And I do a thing called the relationship show. And we'll put you on and you'll do 5 minutes. And he did. And I don't think he felt the love from the Toronto comedy scene, which, you know, can happen when you're new. And it's not necessarily anything evil. It's just that everyone's in their own mode.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't the kind of encouragement that maybe he'd had up until that point.
Right.
And then he did a set. Just the way it worked out that night was a ridiculously tough crowd. Like everyone else, he didn't do well. And I don't think I saw him again. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the backbone, the fortitude, I want to do this. I'm willing to go through this more. It's, in my opinion, why I probably see more men than women is because they're dumb.
Yeah.
And like women tend to go, what?
Yeah.
Why? Why? You know, and understandably so. It's brutal. And then that's also why a lot of the women that do it are so good. That I've worked with.
Absolutely.
And basically, it's not just about talent or, you know, it's about everything.
No, I remember one of the things that when I got into it, that I'd heard Jay Leno say about Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor used to always say, you have to be in comedy for 7 years to even know if it's for you. And it wasn't about the writing. It was about the lifestyle. The lifestyle is impossible if you're trying to maintain relations. Like, kudos to you, Scott, for having such a wonderful family here. I don't know how you do it. Because you do have to give up a lot of things. There's, you know, sometimes you got to sacrifice someone's birthday party because of a gig and things like that. It's not conducive to hanging out with your friends or seeing family.
Oh, for sure. I once did the Riviera in Las Vegas.
Ooh.
And I was doing it with a house MC called Harris Peak, who had his own great life story. But he told me a story about the early days of his career, hanging out with Jay Leno, and Jay Leno walking in at some point and bragging about having a vasectomy,
right?
Because he was done, because he wanted to focus on.
Yeah. He never had kids. Yeah. And I mean that's commitment to get your nuts snipped. Yeah.
You know, and so it's just one of those things. It is very, very tough. I found this happy balance in between. I was always able to just get enough of the gigs I wanted to do and still have time at home.
Yeah.
But I think it's rare.
I think so. I think especially when you're starting out too, when you're just trying to grab stage time whenever you want. Like for someone like yourself, the paid spots are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
So you can be home Sunday to Tuesday, you know. But yeah, when you're starting out, any stage is a good stage, right?
It's also different. It's also very different now. You know, like within 3 years, I was doing JFL.
Right.
And
you'd have to be shot by the Taliban for that to happen now.
Pretty much.
Well, do you think like JFL has like the same kind of like reverence now as it used to? Because there is
I think amongst comedy fans, it's bigger than it's ever been.
And I'm sure amongst comics.
I think you're onto something, that there's other stuff going on.
Yeah. Or like now, I guess that we don't have cable as much is a huge part of it too, because
Sure.
that used to be like that's where you would see Canadian comics is like JFL and their specials from that, but we don't really have that as much, or people aren't tuned into that as much.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not the same. There's other avenues. There's a whole bunch of things. People didn't cross the border as much, in my opinion, 20 years ago.
Right.
And now you see a lot of people go down. It's a different world, you know. But at that time, you know, that was definitely a huge stepping stone.
Mm-hmm. Through your whole career, because as we've said, you've been doing it for a while, have you like noticed different trends or like ebbs and flows in the popularity of comedy? Like right now, would you say like post-pandemic, comedy's kind of happening again, but a lot of it is through podcasts. Like you find a lot of comedy fans, but they're not really going out to shows.
There's now more avenues to enjoy comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's true. It's diversified in terms of how people do it, and that's just going to continue because the technology is there to do it that way. Like you can't stop what's already there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much dead on. I find it really interesting because there's this social media aspect to everything. That's not necessarily a reflection of the comedy that person has
Right.
when they perform live. And that's very interesting.
Well, I'm starting to hear a ton of these stories of people who have great TikTok, Instagram following. So they get booked on shows or they put their own show together, but then they don't have an act.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I can sit in a dark room and I can write out an hour of what I think is funny. But if I haven't gone out and tested that in front of the audience 1,000 times and I've got the timing down and I strip away what isn't actually funny to an audience, you're going to struggle. There's just no two ways around that.
There's that element to it. There's also the element of sometimes people get TikTok famous and it doesn't reflect the comedy or the humor in that doesn't reflect the humor that's in their act. So they actually attract the wrong demographic for what their act is.
Right.
So, you know, and then they like, why are like, they call the audience woke for not getting their jokes that didn't fit what they branded.
Yeah. I've actually seen that happen at Levity. There's a guy who came through at the time. I think he had 5 million followers on TikTok. Really intelligent comic, came through, does dirtier stuff, does the sex stuff and all that. But I swear to God, the audience was 100 people from meth labs in Binbrook. And it didn't match what was going on at all. And I could see it in his eyes afterwards when he's doing the meet and greet, trying to be like doing photos with people going, what exactly have I done here? You know?
Right.
Yeah. But it pays the bills. So you can't complain about that, can you?
Well, if it pays the bills, just stay on TikTok.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. But it's funny because the avenues that comedy opens up for you, like doing sketches with you or doing the one with Paul Maxwell, that would never have occurred to me beforehand. I even did a day this year because a guy by the name of DK Pham out of Vaughan, he messaged me and said, hey, they need a serial killer for this police drama they're filming in Hamilton. Look at the picture. Tell me you couldn't do that, right? And I'm like, okay. So I went. It was one of these silent things. It's a police reenactment, some crime in Alaska. It was great because they put makeup on my face, right? So they got away all the spider veins and all that stuff.
Did you feel beautiful?
I did. I went out to the club last night. I was out dancing that night, going, "Hey, I'm only 35."
Right. Thing is, you got to remember to wash it off, or the next day you look like typhoid.
Pimple face.
Yeah.
Well, there's one thing I learned on that I didn't know. They had me do that bit, and then they're like, you also look a lot like this detective. Is there any way we could get you to shave the beard down to a goatee? And I'm a team player. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And I was talking to someone afterwards, and they were enraged. They're like, dude, you should have got an extra $200 out of them for shaving and all that. And I'm like, well, $200 is a lot of money, but no, I just, you don't want to be problematic, do you?
Yeah. No, I regretted very early in my career agreeing without any compensation to shave my eyebrows.
Right.
For I was the victim of a serial killer.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember you.
Yeah. So yeah, that kind of thing happens in film all the time.
Yeah. I didn't think holding them to ransom would have been the right approach, though.
Well,
Your first day.
Was it an independent production?
No, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it was one of those things they're going to film 16 episodes as quickly as they can, and then syndicate it, right? Like sell it into syndication. But I don't know. But that was background work, and I wouldn't do any acting unless there was a speaking part now,
Mhm.
It's not worth my time to go and stand in the background somewhere. But at the time when, my day job wasn't as successful as it is, it was a lot of fun to do. And you get a lot of things done on a set if you're a background actor.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're organized, you can sit, you're basically getting paid 6 hours to do nothing for the most part, right?
Oh, yeah. If you have a way to fill your idle time
Mm.
on a computer or a book or whatever, for sure.
Sleep. Let's be honest with each other.
No.
It would be sleep. Before we leave, Scott, you're performing at something this year called the Canadian Comedy Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And it's going to be in Hamilton. It's a rather big event. It's the end of February. We'd love for our listeners to have a look at it. I met the guy who's running it. I can't remember his name now, but
Tim Progosh.
yeah, that's the guy, Tim. So I didn't even know who he was. And I'm standing at the bar at Levity with Patrick, and we're goofing around, just cracking jokes before the show. And then he started talking about the Canadian Hall of Fame. And I'm like, if I'd have known from the beginning that he was running the Canadian Hall of Fame, I probably would have been a lot more stunted and, like respectful and quiet and not tried to be too outrageous or anything. But
And not Dan?
yeah, exactly.
And not
Weird, eh?
give the full package? Are you insane?
I know, you're right. You're right.
Sebastian, you know what restraint is?
Yeah, okay. It's a stretch, isn't it?
Always give your best you, Dan.
Yeah, that's
Always.
great advice. That's great advice. And you shouldn't judge people by what you think they can do for you or where they sit in the industry. You should just be yourself, shouldn't you? If there's any advice that we can leave this podcast today,
Yeah, that sounds like terrible. Always be aware.
well, you teach a comedy class. If you were to give a young student a piece of advice, or somebody who was thinking about getting into
Mhm.
comedy, what would that piece of advice be, Scott?
do.
Besides, take the course.
Just do. Just always do. Just
Yeah.
and sometimes I suffer from not following my own advice, by the way,
Mm.
but just always do. Say yes a lot. Don't talk yourself out of things. Take chances. It's, the time is finite.
Yeah.
Opportunities are even more finite.
Yeah.
And people hold age against you. So just get up and do.
I hear that a lot these days, that comedy is a young person's game. And I always go like this.
Yeah. A lot of young people say that.
To me directly all the time. Like, are you not getting? Yeah. No, I think it's really great advice. One of the things that got me into comedy was listening to podcasts. And Norm Macdonald was interviewing Super Dave Osborne, Bob Einstein,
Yeah.
right? God rest his soul. Both of them. I've forgotten that Norm passed. But Norm was doing his bad interviewer shtick, kind of. And he's like, hey, Bob, what advice do you have for young comedians? And without skipping a beat, Bob was like, go out and suck 100 times. And go out and do comedy 100 times and then decide if it's for you. Decide if there's something there that's worth working on. Don't go out and judge yourself until you've done 100 sets. And that, to me, was the reason that I got into comedy, because somehow in the back of my head, I thought you had to be good at it from the get-go, that it wasn't a process, that if you didn't strike gold that first time, like 8 Mile, the old Eminem movie, then that was it. You would never get it. That's it. You weren't a comedian.
Well,
right?
I've seen acts that people pay big money for now suck in their early days,
Right.
because they hadn't found their voice.
Right.
It's not, especially if their voice is unique, takes a while to get that. It depends on the act. Some people write from the top, right? Because they got great joke writing or whatever. So they just find it really fast.
Right.
But there's a lot of people who they're kind of weird and they don't know how to make that weird real to everybody.
Yeah.
But, in a short, I've seen Derek Seguin develop a voice, which I don't think was there when he started.
Right.
Saw Jeremy Hotz. I didn't see Jeremy Hotz do it because by the time I was seeing him, but the man you just mentioned, Tim Progosh, has a story about Jeremy finding his voice.
Right.
So it's very common
Yeah.
to suck at first.
Do you have a moment where you remember kind of that happening for you? Like finding your voice, like realizing, oh, this is it. This is what I have to go for in your own comedy?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It took a while to like really find, but I was kind of fortunate in that I looked weird and could write.
Right.
So I had like I hadn't honed it yet.
Mhm.
I hadn't learned to do all kinds of rooms.
Mhm.
That I had to figure out the most was how do I do this consistently? Like I knew how to make people that were my age laugh. I knew how to younger people, like because I was 20 something,
Right.
and I knew how to do that right away. I was lucky that way, but how to work any kind of room that took a while.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not the kind of thing that anyone can teach you. You have to go out and figure it out for yourself. Everyone's act is so unique, right? I do. It does bug me when people who consider themselves comedians say, well, that wasn't my audience, or, oh God, it's all older people. They're not going to like me. The job is to make every room laugh, right? Like you're supposed to be an entertainer, not an educator, not a provocateur. You're supposed to make them laugh.
Or at least not bomb miserably.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Because
Keep them entertained.
the first time I performed, I killed. The second time I performed, I ran off the stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I did that the first time.
But my friends were in the room the first time. So maybe,
Yeah. I do remember specifically a couple of times very early on. I think my third set, I remember driving to Brantford thinking, I got this. I got this. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to be amazing. And then I started watching the other comedians and I'm like, I'm not half as funny as anybody on what totally shattered me. And then another time, like, I don't know, maybe 6 months in where I really thought I had it. You know what I mean? Like I'm on a good run of shows. Tonight's going to be great, and absolutely bombed. Couldn't figure out why. And I think it was because I was going through the motions. Do you know what I mean? Like I had the patter down so tight that there was nothing organic about it or engaging to the audience, right?
Yeah. Rule number one, always start with the audience in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's good advice. But then now you learn from that you're never, if you don't do the necessary things before you go on stage that you always do, and if you don't read the room and try to play to that audience, you're never bulletproof in this industry is the point,
It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
In fact, that often makes it worse because if you're anyway established, right? So there's a perception of you.
Yeah.
And you start to disappoint on that perception a little bit.
Right.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Like it goes south really quickly sometimes on people who come in with a certain, these guys are up here. Wait a minute. Right now they look worse than the act that went on before them.
Right. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this guy sucks.
Yeah. I've noticed that at Levity when you show up on a Wednesday on the amateur night, you're obviously there to work on new bits.
Right.
And I'm guilty of doing this. They give Scott this huge, massive intro about all the things he's doing.
And I would just shut up.
Yeah.
Don't tell them who I am.
Yeah.
Just let me go up there.
I'm like this to the audience. I guarantee you this guy's funny. Let me.
Yeah.
If anyone tonight's going to make you laugh, it's him.
Yeah.
No pressure, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're sitting there with your new joke that you scribbled on a piece of paper an hour before. I'll hop on and just throw out these words.
Yeah.
I'll find something and
Yeah. Talk about Manolis is the same way. He's like, don't do that Godfather of Hampton comedy stuff. Just bring me up,
It's Wednesday.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out.
Yeah.
Here's a guy. He's fun.
It is so important how the host sets you up, though. I learned very early on that it's okay to suck as a host, as long as then you don't put that suckitude onto the next comedian by doing something stupid like introducing them as your best friend, or you have no association with the next comedian whatsoever if you've just bombed.
Yeah. The worst intro I ever got is from a comedian who passed away, who I guess had an issue with me because at that point I was on TV and,
Right.
But the intro, I'll never forget this. And the headliner was a guy named Greg Morton, who he did America's Funniest Talent Show, whatever. He went into the semifinals recently.
Right.
It
Okay.
was very good.
Yeah.
And also, there's a knock on my door before I go on stage, and Greg goes, "Listen, AMC does not like you. It's not your fault. It's just that you're doing well, and he hates it when people are doing well.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally." So I go down, and the intro I get is this next act has you can see him on CBC, whatever. He's got this bear bit that everyone thinks is funny, but yeah, it's really he's really venting as everyone thinks it's funny, but it's not as funny as my bear bit. I literally said that. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Faulconbridge. I'm like,
That's the bear bits.
yeah, that was without question. But you know what? I actually handled that okay
Right.
because of the generosity of Greg Morton, who warned me it was going to happen.
I
Right.
was gonna
Right.
ask,
Right.
So that was
right.
better that you had the warning. If you had just gone up and heard that, yeah.
Yeah, in that case, it certainly was because I was expecting it.
Mhm.
And I think had that hit me just in the moment with no warning,
You'd have been confused.
I would
Yeah.
I would have been very confused and most likely very angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
We're trying to make you laugh while you're
Yeah.
So,
steaming.
do you remember? Did you comment on what he had said at all, or did you just?
I made fun of it for about 3.5 minutes.
Right.
I was just, ladies and gentlemen, by the way, none of my stuff is as funny as the last act. And I just kept going. I'm always the third funniest person on the show. Yeah.
Yeah. Manage expectations.
Yeah. I just completely,
Yeah.
took what he did and I just continued it.
That's great. So when they're driving home in the car, they're like, "That bronze medalist was quite funny.
Yeah.
It was surprisingly funny, that one."
Also, he was giving me a lift home. So that made it
Oh, we got to have you back, Scott. You're going to be our first guest. We didn't mention that off the top. We are releasing this sometime in early February, and we wanted you to be number one because you're such a great guy and you have such a great history. But let's have you back another time to talk about war stories. Maybe we could get 3 or 4 comics together and talk about their worst bombs and their worst hecklers and all the things that we.
You're making this so inviting. Please describe the worst moments of your life.
We'd like to have you back for an episode we're calling Trauma Dump.
Therapy session, actually.
That's right. That's right. Maybe we can get it sponsored by.
Your help.
There you go. There you go. I wasn't going to say it. But hey, Scott, thank you very much for joining us and having us into your home. Really looking forward to showing you the podcast and working with you this year, man. It's going to be a great year.
Dan, it's always great to work with you. Now,
cheers.
get out of my house.
The ties that bind us tie us together there. The ties that bind. The ties that bind us tie us together there. The ties that bind. The ties that bind.
Give the recording, maybe?
For the sake of the recording, yeah.
Or for the listeners to hear?
Not for the listeners, for the find a bill. Well, I guess
us.
that's why they put titles on things.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, in case things don't save properly, that's probably good practice.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That sounds
pretty
like
little
something smart
ditty
people do.
about the ties that bind. This is a section of our podcast where Alicia and I talk about the things that we have in common. Isn't it right? Because I grew up from about the age of 16 in a place called Waterdown, which is just like up on the hill, the nice part above Burlington.
Are you saying Burlington's not nice?
No, I'm saying Burlington's boring. No.
Yeah, that's indisputable.
Burlington's fine. It's just interesting. The reason we have this section in the podcast is because there is so many similarities, so many things that we have in common, so many touch points. And I think it's why it's so much fun to talk to you because we have so much in common.
Yeah, and for those who don't know or who haven't met us before or seen us, we might not be the most obvious pairing as friends, but we actually do have a lot in common.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's so true. That's so true.
yeah.
as mentioned earlier, I remind Alicia of her dad, or at least all her friends of her dad. So, but that's cool. One of the things we wanted to talk about really quickly, because this just the whole concept of a movie being filmed in Burlington warmed my heart unbelievably, because I make fun of Burlington, but I did live there for 5 years quite recently in the big, very noticeable pink building on Warwick Court. And so to see that in a movie.
Yeah, and I was born and raised there.
Yeah.
So it was even more interesting. And to your point, saying that Burlington is like so boring, that's exactly the mentality I grew up with.
Yeah.
And
So the movie we're talking about is I Like Movies, or as I've been referring to it, We Like Films. We love films. But it's called I Like Movies, and I saw it first, but I think you were aware of it.
Yes, I was aware of it.
Yeah.
Because I think it must have premiered at TIFF or it was playing at TIFF, I think.
Right.
Or whatever. My Toronto friends knew about it before I did.
Yeah.
And it just came out in 2022. And I had a friend message me, and she was like, have you seen this movie yet? And I was like, no, what is it? She was like, it's filmed in Burlington, and I'm convinced one of the characters is based off this woman we used to work with. So you need to watch it and tell me if you recognize who I'm talking about.
Which woman?
One of the coworkers. Not like the main female coworker, but it was the styled. It was like the girl who had like the really thick highlights, the bright eyeshadow.
Yeah. And just to set the scene for people who haven't seen it, it's a movie about a guy who likes movies. He makes movies with his friends, and he works in a Blockbuster, and it's set, I think, in like the early 90s. And it's
or the early 2000s.
Early 2000s, you think?
Yeah.
Maybe. Did they still
Yeah,
have
I can
Blockbuster
confirm
then?
this.
Yeah.
Yes, they definitely did. Also, it's like, it's not Blockbuster in the movie, but it's obviously Blockbuster.
Jumbo Video, maybe?
I have theories about this. This is the thing, watching this movie, everything to me was like an investigation, because it's obvious the writer director must have grown up in Burlington, who, by the way, Chandler Levac is the
big
writer
shout out
director. But I know that it's the early 2000s because at one part they're watching like Adam Sandler on SNL. Yeah. And as I was watching it, I was like, wow, I wonder like what movie he was promoting.
Yeah.
And because everything about the movie so far felt like
but
growing
he was
up for me.
Wasn't Sandler on in the 90s?
But he was on as a guest host.
Oh.
And he was doing the Hanukkah song.
Sorry.
So I was like, I wonder if he was there for 8 Crazy Nights, because I remember, and then I remembered when I was in that must have come out when I was in like grade 7 or 8. My friend and I went to the Famous Players in Burlington and saw 8 Crazy Nights, and the theater was so full we had to like sit on the steps, but we did it anyways. We stayed. And then like 10 minutes later, as I'm watching the movie, they go to that very same Famous Players that I was just thinking about, and they like get tickets to see, I think Punch Drunk Love also comes out, so that's a big part of the movie.
Right. Yeah.
And then I saw it in the background on like the whatever board. 8 Crazy Nights was also an option.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, it's crazy. I was there. I'm in the movie.
You like looking over your shoulder for a camera? What's going on here? Somebody with a notepad writing down what you do?
Yeah. But like a bunch of my friends in high school worked at that Famous Players. Like it was really interesting to like see all the places that you grew up in a movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have to tell you, like, if you're like me and you're sick of superhero movies or movies where they have to chase an orb or someone mutates or there's a vampire that can walk around in the daylight or whatever, then this is a great movie because it's a great little story. The climactic scene, which I don't give away too much detail about at all, is one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life. Like they're having this huge climactic moment. It's all coming, all coming out. And then the stuff that's going on at the same time is just absolutely ridiculous. It made, that was worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. It's on Netflix too.
It's on Netflix. If you could steal a Netflix subscription, get yourself one of them and watch it. No, I would highly recommend it. I thought it was really good fun.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, and it's always fun to see where you lived in the movies. You get that a little bit with Hamilton, of course, because there's always, that's
But
Gore
it's
Park.
never, but it's never like as Hamilton. You know, it's like this was shot in Burlington. It was meant to be Burlington.
Yeah, good
They weren't
point.
pretending it was anything else.
Yeah, good point. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we hope you've enjoyed our first episode. Come back and listen to episode 2. See if we get any better.
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
All right. So that's bye from me.
All right. Ta-ta. Talk soon.
Bye now.
Mwah.